They said bagger racing would never be taken seriously. Indian motorcycle proved them wrong. Daytona Atlanta full throttle. Massive machines thrown into corners like superbikes. Sparks flying, engines screaming. And at those races, Indian won. But this story didn't begin on the track. For years, Indian Motorcycle carried one of the most legendary names in American motorcycling. A company built on history, then everything started to change. You can see it in the racing, in the factory, in the machines they are building right now. It doesn't feel like a brand defending its history anymore. It feels like a brand trying to prove something again. King of the Baggers 2026. Indian arrived at Daytona. The challenger came into the season faster than anyone expected. Not just on the straights, everywhere. And the riders made that difference visible. Herfus, Gillum, Landers, O'Hara. Different styles, same result, constant pressure at the front of the field. When Vance and Hines joined Indian Motorcycle, the message became impossible to ignore. It is much bigger than a racing partnership. This is actually a sign that Indian is restructuring how performance development works inside the company. And if you look closely, King of the Baggers is becoming a live engineering laboratory for future Indian motorcycles. Most people focus on horsepower numbers. But inside the paddock, the real battle is thermal consistency, tire management, electronics calibration, and chassis behavior under load. That's where Indian's PowerPlus platform changed the game. Not because liquid cooling is modern, but because it allows the bike to maintain stable combustion temperatures deep into race distance, where air-cooled motors begin losing consistency. And consistency wins championships. What makes the Vance and Hines deal important is this: Indian is effectively outsourcing part of its high-performance R&D process to one of the most experienced V-twin race engineering groups in America. That changes development speed dramatically. Factory engineering cycles are usually slow, race teams are not. The 2026 Vance and Hines Indian Racing Team is not just last year's bike with new sponsors. This is effectively a reorganized factory engineering platform, and the biggest clue is not visible on the outside. It's who now controls development. Vance and Hines is no longer just supplying parts. They are running the race program itself. That changes how the motorcycle evolves during the season, because race shops develop motorcycles differently than OEM engineering departments. And riders immediately noticed the 2026 bike behaves differently. Faster testing, faster iteration, more aggressive setup experimentation. The PowerPlus 112 platform remains, but Vance and Hines appears to have focused heavily on three areas: chassis stability, under acceleration, electronics refinement, corner exit drive behavior. That last category is critical in King of the Baggers. These motorcycles produce enormous torque while carrying huge rotating mass. If the bike squats excessively on exit, the geometry changes mid-corner and the rider loses confidence immediately. The 2026 bike looks calmer under throttle application than earlier Challenger race bikes. That suggests major changes in shock linkage setup, anti-squat geometry, damping strategy, or engine braking calibration, possibly all four. The bike transitions direction more cleanly than previous Indians. That sounds impossible for a bagger, but it matters enormously at tracks like Road Atlanta and Daytona chicanes. The 2026 machine looks tighter, more controlled, less dramatic weight transfer. The electronics package is the biggest story. Modern, king of the baggers bikes are no longer brute force motorcycles. They are deeply electronics dependent race bikes. Indian is outsourcing part of its high-performance R&D process to one of the most experienced V-twin race engineering groups in America, Vance Hines. And with Vance Hines now controlling the program, expect much more aggressive, data-driven tuning during race weekends. That means quicker map revisions, rider-specific engine braking setups, traction strategies customized corner by corner, and more adaptive race setup changes between sessions. One of the biggest technical questions for 2026 is engine durability versus peak output, because the PowerPlus platform already makes strong usable power. The challenge now is not simply producing more horsepower, it's maintaining thermal consistency and mechanical stability over repeated race weekends. That is where Vance Hines' knowledge becomes extremely valuable. They have decades of experience managing V-twin vibration harmonics, heat cycling, fueling under extreme load, and long-run durability. The CEO era a new direction for Indian motorcycle. The biggest story at Indian motorcycle right now is not the race bike. It's the organizational shift happening behind it. Because, for the first time in years, Indian is no longer operating like a division inside Polaris. The company is now under new ownership through Carolwood LP, and Mike Kennedy has taken over as CEO during the exact same period as the 125th anniversary push. That timing is not accidental, because 2026 is really about three things: independence, performance identity, and faster product direction. Mike Kennedy is not a random corporate executive. He spent decades at Harley-Davidson, time at Vance Hines, leadership at Rumbleian. Rumbleian operates very close to real customer behavior. What motorcycles sell, what bikes sit on showroom floors, what customers finance, what dealers struggle to move, and which categories actually generate profit. His experience covers OEM manufacturing, dealership economics, aftermarket performance culture, and racing business structure simultaneously. The Vance Hines partnership suddenly makes much more sense when you realize Kennedy previously ran Vance Hines. That's the hidden layer many viewers missed. The people now influencing Indian motorcycle all come from environments obsessed with racing, tuning, aftermarket performance, dealer profitability, and enthusiast culture. That changes company behavior fast. Indian Motorcycle reorganized the entire factory racing structure around Vance Hines, because This is no longer about proving that a bagger can go fast. The real objective now is development speed, engineering precision, and long-term platform evolution. And if you look closely at what's happening inside Indian Motorcycle in 2026, the race bike starts making a lot more sense. That's the real story behind Indian Motorcycle in 2026, not the anniversary logos, not the marketing campaigns, not even the trophies. It's the fact that the company suddenly looks far more aggressive technically than it did just a few years ago. Look at the sequence carefully: new ownership structure. The PowerPlus engine becomes the center of everything. That is not random. That looks like a company accelerating toward a completely different future. Because Indian already has heritage, the Thunderstroke platform already owns that space. What Indian wants now is performance credibility, real performance credibility. The biggest clue about Indian's future may already be sitting in plain sight. The company is investing enormous resources into a liquid-cooled overhead cam platform. The exact same moment it restructures racing around factory-level performance engineering. Manufacturers do not do that unless larger plans already exist internally, which means the Challenger race bike may not simply be a race bike anymore. It may actually be the public prototype of where Indian Motorcycle intends to go next. Next generation of Indian Motorcycle performance products. Indian Motorcycle has already proved it can survive history. Now, the company is preparing for its next era, not protecting its last one. What comes next will define everything. ARO, American Racing Operations. And this time, the rumors are no longer rumors, because Indian Motorcycle CEO Mike Kennedy has now confirmed it himself. ARO is real. Indian Motorcycle is expected to officially announce ARO on May 27th, and only days later, King of the Baggers arrives at Road America, the exact racetrack where Indian's Challenger has been dominating in competition during the King of the Baggers weekend at Road America. Mike Kennedy specifically said, ARO will eventually become complete motorcycles. That is huge. Indian may eventually release higher performance Challenger models and parts, factory performance baggers, race-developed touring bikes, possibly even entirely new PowerPlus based platforms. Kennedy repeatedly emphasizes that the race Challenger and customer Challenger share core architecture. That means Indian is deliberately using racing to validate production engineering. And tomorrow, we may finally discover what Indian Motorcycle wants to become. Tomorrow, everything changes.